Now, they're on yet another operation. If they go back, they get reset, and they're out on another operation, doing a patrol, and I'm going back to the book. About 5 meters past the gate, the two men turned to me and waved me forward. All clear, sir. Let's go, Rudo. I passed through the gate. My right hand grasped my M16. My left held my cigarette. I was humming the Blue Tail Fly as I mentally ticked off the positions around the saddle where I would set my men. I noticed the time, 07:45 hours. My foot slipped backwards a fraction of an inch, hitting the trigger mechanism of a mine. I never heard the explosion. Black powder and dirt flew by me. My eardrums ripped. My body was flying through the air. I threw my arms in front of me in a reflex motion to balance myself. My eyes registered the horror of a brilliantly white, jagged bone sticking out of the stump of arm above where my left elbow had been. Ragged, bloody flesh surrounded the splintered bone. My mind cursed as utter helplessness and despair overwhelmed me. Another part of my body coolly calculated what had caused the explosion. It had been a landmine. But what kind would blow off my arm instead of my legs? Of course, it had to be a bouncing Betty, a mine that flies out of the ground after being tripped and explodes waist high. That would do it. My M16 had been in my right hand. The rifle was shattered. My hand was mangled. I stared in horror at what remained of my right arm. The flesh had been ripped away, exposing 2 bones in my white forearm from wrist to the elbow. The bones looked like 2 white, glistening, narrow rods buried in raw, bloody meat. Thinking, my God, my God, my God, I felt told the defeat of my life as I landed on my feet 5 yards from where the mine had exploded. After landing, I staggered forward 2 or 3 steps and then collapsed. My legs wouldn't work. The mine had gone off about 6 inches from my left hip. From the waist down, my body was mutilated and torn, where large chunks of flesh, muscles, blood vessels, and nerves had been ripped away by the hot exploding shrapnel. My buttocks were blown away. The back of my legs were ripped to the bone down to my heels. I rolled over on my back, being careful to keep my stump and right arm out of the dirt and sand. My body was sending so many pain signals to my brain that it overloaded like an electrical circuit. It caused me to feel a racing, humming numbness. I lifted my head to view a scene from hell. I watched a couple of men run by me to the wounded point man. They would only glance at me sideways as I lay there holding my bloody stump in the air. They seemed nervous. Some of my men ran toward me, then turned suddenly away at the sight of my torn body. They stood near me but hesitated to come too close, as if their movement through the air would make it worse. Spag asked me to turn sideways a little bit so he could pull my gear off. There were tears in his eyes as he worked over me. With a grunt, he pulled the belt out from under me. "Is there anything I can do for you?" Spag asked. "Yes, run over there and pick up my arm and bring it back to me. I don't want to leave it in this stinking village." I told Marley to get my squad leaders. "Go take care of the other men, Doc. They need you." I looked up. Marley and my squad leaders were standing in a rough line along my right side. I asked who was hurt. I was feeling weaker and weaker. It was so goddamn cold. As my body fought for life, my thoughts ran to my men and my platoon. I felt I was cheating them by leaving them when they needed me most. When I had joined the platoon as their leader, they had taught me the ways to survive in combat. A second lieutenant who was new in country, and they were old-timers, 18, 19, 20, but old to the ways of combat and death. As I gained experience and confidence as a leader, I became an old-timer, having to make decisions that put me in the position I was in now, wounded and maimed, facing death. My men were still up there, looking at me, despair on their faces. Their invulnerable leader had been brought down. "Marley?" "Yes, sir. I want your men to get the dink who planted that mine. I want him dead. Get him." "We will, 1-6. Don't you worry about that." They looked at each other, then back at me. The gray haze of the day was strong. I pushed it back to look beyond my men. It was colder now and harder to see. I was thinking of my Grandma Downs and her farm, of the woods and fields of Indiana I loved so much. If only I could walk them one more time. I'm only 23 years old, and I'm dying. What a waste. There are so many things I had meant to do and say, but I hadn't. Now I will never get the chance.